our clinical MSN programs. That includes the Adult Gerontology Acute Care Nurse Practitioner Program, Family Nurse Practitioner, and Psychiatric Mental Health Nurse Practitioner Program. Before I get started, I do have a few housekeeping items that will help this session run a little bit smoother. It's helpful if when you ask a question, please give your name. That way I know how to address the question, and I may have to follow up with you afterwards. Also, if you're not speaking, it does help if you mute either your phone or your laptop, because that'll cut down on background noise. Sometimes there are people who are on call, or maybe we hear dogs barking in the background, that sort of thing. So that is helpful. So, all right, let's go ahead and get started. So this is how the meeting is going to work today. I've got a PowerPoint presentation that'll take about 30 minutes to get through. At the conclusion of the presentation, I'll open it up for general questions. Having said that, this is very informal, and so you're certainly welcome to ask questions at any point throughout the presentation. If you ask a question that's going to be addressed in a slide or two, I may just simply say, hold on about 2 minutes, we're going to get to that. Also, this session is being recorded, so I'll send everybody a copy, both of the slides and the recordings after the session. It can take, depending on the day and how long the session goes, it can take an hour or more for the recording to update and be ready for publication. So it'll either be this afternoon or tomorrow morning. I'll send everybody a copy of the presentation. All right, hopefully everyone can hear me. This may sound a little silly, but if you can't hear me, please either speak up right now or post a chat note. As you see, you can participate either via chat or audibly. What I'd like to do now is just do a quick roll call to make sure, A, that I've got everybody, and B, that you can hear me. So I'm just going to go down a list here, and if you can hear me, just say yes. So Eric, can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Eric, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, okay, great. Okay, thank you. Pam, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Great. Joe?
Yep.
Okay, Laverta?
Yes.
Great. Maria Shea Gibson? Maria Gibson? Yes, okay. So I guess you can't speak, but you can hear me okay, great. So Maria, it looks like you're actually logged in twice, but that's fine. Emily Snowd, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Chan Wu, can you hear me okay? Chan Wu, can you hear me? Okay. Christine Adams, can you hear me? Christine, no. Lucely, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Great, great, thank you. Kathy Gregory, can you hear me okay? Kathy Gregory, can you hear me okay?
The video off. It was already off.
Okay. Joy, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Great, super. All right, bear with me just a second here. And then I see Kirian just joined us. Kirian, can you hear me okay?
I gotta go off.
Kirian, can you hear me? Okay. For those folks who just joined, great. Okay, Kathy can hear me. For those folks who just joined, I will be recording the session, and I'll send it to you afterwards. I realize we're starting a little late. Sorry about the technical difficulties. If you do need to leave a little early, that's fine, and I certainly understand. You'll get a copy of the slides and the recording afterwards, so hopefully they'll answer any questions you have. Two real quick housekeeping items that I shared, but I know we've just had a couple of people join us, is it does help if you ask a question, or when you ask a question, please state your name. And then two, when you're not speaking, please mute your microphone, because sometimes we'll get some background noise, dogs barking, or people being paged over intercom, that sort of thing. So, all right, but thank you again for joining us today. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So here's the agenda for today's session. Some of the information we shared will be true across all MSN programs, and some is going to be specific to the USC College of Nursing. The presentation, again, is going to focus on our clinical MSN programs. So that's our adult gerontology acute care, our family nurse practitioner, and our psych mental health programs. We've got another session for our non-clinical programs that we'll do later. If you're interested in one of those, don't hesitate to reach out to me, and I'll be happy to share any of those details. So, as I said a little earlier, this session is very
just send it
informal,
over.
and I
Thank
do
you.
encourage you to ask any questions you have along the way. Before we get started, does anybody have any questions? And that way, when I get to that point of the presentation, I'll make sure that I address that question. Any questions before we dive in? Okay, I'll take that as a no. I see someone notated as presenter just joined us. Who's that? Who's presenter? No? Okay, being shy, that's fine. All right, so before we move on, I think it's important, before we get started, to note that earlier this year, we were named the #1 public university for online master's nurses programs by US News and World Reports, and we were #2 overall. Specifically, the FNP program was highlighted as the #4 public FNP program in the country. And this is the 6th consecutive year we've been in the top 10. I just thought you all would like to know what kind of reputation the USC College of Nursing has. All right, so who should get a BSN? I'm sorry, who should get an MSN? Any BSN prepared nurse who wants to advance in their career. Having an MSN allows for specialization and certification. This in turn can provide opportunities for job advancement within your current organization or other job opportunities. Okay. So what programs does USC offer? The USC College of Nursing currently has 6 different master's degree programs. Each has a slightly different focus and requirements. As mentioned earlier, this presentation is going to focus on our clinical programs. So that would be adult gerontology acute care, family nurse practitioner, and psych mental health. We also offer master's degrees in nursing administration, nursing informatics, and our new master's entry to practice program. If you're interested in any of those, let me know either at the end of the session or later, and I'll be happy to share more details with you. Okay, now, before we move on, I'd like to know which area each person is interested in so that when I get to the different sections, I make sure to address that. For example, if we don't have anybody interested in FNP, we'll kind of skip through that. If everybody's interested in psych mental health, we'll pay special attention to that. So I've got a list here. I'll just go down the list. You tell me your Eric, what is your area of interest? Eric, what's your area of interest?
Family nurse practitioner.
Family, okay, FNP, great, thank you. Pam, what about you?
The psychiatric nurse practitioner.
Psych, okay, great. Who's next? Joe?
Psychiatric.
Psych, great, thank you. Laverta?
Psych.
Psych, perfect. Maria? And I see some people typing it in, that's perfect, if that works best for you. I'm sorry? Okay. FNP and acute care, great. Who's next on my list? Emily? Emily?
Adult geriatric acute care.
Adult Gero, okay, good. Chanwu? Okay. Christine? Lucelli?
PMHMP.
Psych, okay, great, thank you. Kathy, Gregory? Okay, and some of these may be in the chat box. I'll check that in a second. Joy, I think I saw you're interested in psych, okay?
Psych, yeah, psych.
Okay, great, thank you. Carry on?
Psych.
Psych, okay. Skylar?
Family nurse practitioner.
FNP, great, thank you. Moswald? Okay, and I see something, let me just check my chat notes here to make sure I've got everybody. Okay, fine. Bear with me just a second because I want to make sure that I've got everybody's interest here. Skylar, FNP, Moswald, FNP. Great, okay, all right. Thank you very much. All right, well, let's move on. So the Adult Gerontology Acute Care Program prepares nurses to provide direct patient management to acutely ill adults in gerontological patients with complex health problems in both acute and complex care settings. As you can see, graduates work in a variety of acute care settings ranging from hospital inpatient care and critical care to trauma, surgery, and some of the other areas you see listed here. Once you complete the program, you're eligible to sit for the Adult Gerontology Acute Care Nurse Practitioner Certification Exam, administered either through the American Nursing Credential Center or the American Association of Critical Care Nurses. Not everyone who completes the degree takes the exam, although most people do. One thing I want to point out here is 100% of our most recent graduates passed the exam the first time they took it. So 100% first time pass rate. So what's included in the acute care program? The acute care program is a total of 14 classes. As long as you stay on schedule, you can complete the program in 8 semesters or just under 3 years. Classes are taught in 3 different formats: didactic, clinical, and immersion coursework. And I'll explain the difference between the different class formats in a few minutes once I go through all 3 programs. Students may start the acute care program either during the fall or summer semesters. And we are currently taking applications for the summer 2021 term. The application deadline is October 31st. If you're interested in the fall term, we'll start accepting applications on November 1st. Oh, I'm sorry. The FNP is a good generalist degree, and the program prepares nurses to provide primary care across the lifespan. The focus is on wellness and prevention, but they also provide treatment for everything from mild ailments to serious conditions. Graduates are employed in a wide variety of both inpatient and outpatient settings, ranging from clinics and doctor's offices to schools, specialty care clinics, etc. Graduates typically take the FNP certification exam. Again, our most recent cohort had 100% first-time pass rate. Okay, for us, the FNP program is a total of 47 credits, which is spread across 15 classes. It's anticipated you can complete the program in 8 semesters. Similar to the acute care program, you've got didactic, clinical, and immersion courses. You may start the FNP program either during the summer or fall semesters. And similar to acute care, we're currently taking applications for the summer semester. Application deadline is October 31st. The Psychiatric Mental Health Program prepares graduates to provide holistic psychiatric mental health services to patients across the lifespan in a variety of settings. Services review behavior, experience, and psychopharmacology, and the treatment may include psychotherapy, consultation, and trauma-related care. Graduates work in a diverse range of settings, including psychiatric facilities, home health organizations, addiction centers, schools, etc. Graduates from the Psych Mental Health Program also have the option of sitting for the certification exam. Our most recent cohort of graduating students had a 88% pass rate, and that's right at both the state and the national average. Similar to the FNP program, the Psych Mental Health Program is 47 credits. It's spread across 14 classes. Similar to the previous 2 programs, this can also be completed within 8 semesters or just shy of 3 years. Classes are taught in didactic, clinical, and immersion formats. And you'll see that for the Psych Mental Health Program, we only admit students to start during the summer term. So we are currently taking applications. The application deadline is October 31st. Okay, what is the class format? So as previously mentioned, classes are offered in 3 different formats: didactic, clinical, and immersion. Didactic simply means online coursework. The lectures are asynchronous, which means they're pre-recorded and you watch them at a time that's convenient for you. You do not need to log on at any particular time, but you should plan on having an assignment due every week, and as long as you get it submitted at the appropriate time, then you're good to go. You could watch it at 8 o'clock Monday morning, you could watch it at midnight on Thursday. It doesn't matter as long as you get everything completed and submitted at the appropriate time. Clinicals are when students work in a healthcare facility and get practical experience and exposure. For our clinical program, students will complete 3 clinical courses. Each course requires 224 clinical hours for a total of 672. The specific guidelines for the clinical requirements and setting are going to be a little bit different for each program, and that'll be outlined for you once you get into the program. We do get a lot of questions about selecting preceptors. Students are encouraged to find their own preceptors because they often already have relationships or contacts within healthcare facilities in their community. Depending on where you work, sometimes you can complete the clinical requirements in your same facility as long as it's a different area. For example, if you work in the ED, you wouldn't necessarily be able to complete the requirements within the emergency department, but you might be able to do it in a psych ward or labor and delivery or someplace else. So it all depends. If you're having a difficult time finding a preceptor, we've got someone on campus who can help you do that. I will say it sometimes takes 6 to 9 months to get that set up. So you're encouraged to start that process early, that search early. Your first clinical is not scheduled till your 4th semester. So you've got a full year from the time you start to get that set up, and you are encouraged to get that process started as soon as possible. Obviously, if you live in South Carolina, we've got a lot more contacts here and provide a lot more support than if you live in, say, Kansas or Texas. The last type of course is an immersion course, and this has the typical online presentation format that all didactic classes have. However, one time during the semester, you'll be required to come to campus for a 3-day clinical immersion, and typically it's like a Wednesday through a Friday. This is when they do checkoffs for the different skills that you should be learning during your clinical experiences. For the acute care program, they've got 2 immersion courses. The FNP program has 3 immersion courses, and the psych mental health program only has 1 immersion visit. We'll let you know the dates of the on-campus visits at least a semester in advance so you can plan your schedule accordingly. All of the programs are set up with the expectation that students will be enrolled in 2 classes per semester. The majority of our students do work either part-time or full-time, and 2 classes seems to be the schedule that works best and still allows students to complete the program in a reasonable amount of time. We often have people ask if they can take more classes or fewer classes per semester. Unfortunately, the way the curriculum is set up, there's not a lot of flexibility to deviate from the schedule. Not every class is offered every semester. Also, the classes are sequential in nature. So if you only took 1 class the first semester, you might not be able to take any classes the next semester just because you haven't had all the necessary prerequisites or the course is not offered. If you are allowed to take a semester off if you need to, but realize that may affect when you're allowed to return. Based on what you need, you may need to skip a semester or maybe even a whole year before that class is offered again. All right, I realize that I have covered a whole lot of information up to this point. Does anybody have any questions before we move on? Okay, great. Well, we will continue then. All right. Am I qualified for admission? So to be admitted, to be eligible for one of the MSN programs, you have to have successfully completed a BSN degree. Applicants should have an overall GPA of 3.0 or higher in all prior coursework. We pay special attention to any courses specific to your nursing program, specifically any nursing courses or science courses, but we do calculate an overall GPA if you took courses outside of nursing. You must have at least 2,400 hours work experience as a nurse within the last 24 months. We prefer anyone applying for the acute care program have those in an acute care setting, such as ICU, med-surg, emergency department, etc. It's not required, but it is preferred. Similar for the FNP, they like applicants who have an acute care background, but it's not a requirement. Similarly, the applicants for the psych mental health program, they like to see applicants who have experience in a psych mental health setting. That makes you a little bit more competitive. It is preferred, but it is not required. You must have a current unencumbered nursing license for the state where you live and where you'll be practicing. You must also have current BLS certification. Anyone applying for the acute care program must also have a ACLS certification. You'll see there's a note there about being a resident of an approved state. Recently, some of the state boards of nursing have started imposing restrictions about students within their state enrolling in programs outside of their state. We're currently allowed to admit students from about 20 different states, including most of those in the Southeast. If you have any questions about which state, what your state is, and if you are eligible, you can review our website. I'll tell you real quickly, I'll just go ahead and read a list of the current states that are approved. They include Arkansas, Colorado, Florida, Georgia, Indiana, Kansas, Kentucky, Maryland, Michigan, Missouri, North Carolina, Ohio, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, Texas, Virginia, and Washington, D.C. We just recently added, I want to say it was Indiana and maybe Maryland. So they're the most two recent ones. Okay. What is the application process? Interested applicants must submit an online application to the graduate school. The application should include a goal statement and a current copy of your CV or resume, as well as your nursing license. The goal statement will have a prompt, and it should describe the role of the nurse practitioner for the specific program you're applying for, and describe how the program fits your career goals. We need to receive copies of all transcripts from anywhere that you ever received college credit, whether it was in high school as a dual enrolled student, as an undergrad, as a graduate student. You know, even if you took one course during the summer, during your undergrad someplace, we need to get a copy of those transcripts. We can use unofficial copies of the transcripts for the application review process. If you're admitted, we'll need official copies of all transcripts at that point. You also need to have 3 letters of recommendation from individuals who are masters or doctorally prepared in the healthcare field. When you complete the application, you'll list the name and contact information for 3 individuals. They'll be sent a link to our electronic recommendation form, and they can complete the form and submit it electronically. So you do not need to physically collect letters of recommendation from anyone. If they'd like to upload a copy of a letter of recommendation, they're certainly welcome to do that. Or if you've been given a letter of recommendation, you can also upload that with your application. The verification of work hours form is the form that I mentioned a moment ago that confirms that you've had at least 2,400 hours work experience as a nurse within the last 2 years. You'll see that we do not require the GRE or any other standardized test score for admission. And you are encouraged to upload all of these items with your application. You won't be able to submit your application unless some things like the goal statement, resume, and nursing license are uploaded. But we do encourage you to upload as much as you can. I also encourage you to submit your application before the deadline. If you don't have all the other documents ready, that way you can have a little bit more time to get everything submitted. Once you submit your application, we'll review your application and let you know if you have any outstanding items. The earlier you submit your application, the more time you have to get any outstanding items in. After you submit your application, you can log back in to see what items have arrived. It's also important to note it can take the graduate school up to a week to process all items that are submitted. So if you wait till the last minute to submit your application and it takes 3 or 4 days for your application to be processed, you might only have a day or 2 to get any remaining items submitted. Whereas if you submit it a week or 2 ahead of time, it'll be processed quicker, and you'll also have additional time to get more items in if there's anything outstanding. I will say that it's not unusual for recommendations and transcripts to take longer to arrive. Okay, again, covered a whole lot of information here about the application process. Does anybody have any questions before we move on? No? Okay. All right, let's continue then. So what are the application deadlines? As mentioned earlier, The acute care, FNP, and psych mental health program, or all three programs, admit students to start during the summer term. We're currently accepting applications. The application deadline is October 31st. Again, encourage you to submit your application prior to the deadline. Both the adult gerontology acute care and the FNP programs also admit students to start during the fall semester. We'll start taking applications for the fall on November 1st. That deadline is March 1st. Again, for the psych mental health program, they only admit for the summer. So if you're not applying or don't get everything in by October 31st, then you need to think about applying next year. All application materials must be submitted for your application to be considered. As I've said multiple times, encourage you to get everything in before the deadline. Applicants typically know their admission decision about 4 to 6 weeks after the application deadline. Where do you send anything? So again, we recommend you submit most items, upload most items to your application. Any official items that are being sent, for example, transcripts, you can send them to the address here. After you submit your application, if you have something else you need to add to it, you can send it to the email address listed here. You can also go back into your application at any time to see what has arrived and been processed. Again, we will let you know once your application has been processed if there's any outstanding items. We'll also let you know once your application is complete and gets sent to the department for review. I've included 3 links here that I thought would be helpful. The first is to our College of Nursing website. The second link is to our frequently asked question page and answers a lot of the kind of basic questions that students often have. And the final link is to the graduate school application. All right, I know we've covered a whole lot of information within the last 30 minutes. So now it's your turn. What kind of questions do you have?
Hi, so my name is Lucelli. I did have a question about being able to transition to, or do people ever transition from an FMP program to the psych mental health program?
Okay, thank you, Lucelli. Interesting question, good question. A couple different ways to, I want to make sure I understand the question. So if you start in the FMP program, if you're midway through it, it is possible to transition to another program if you decide that's not the program you want to finish. Of course, encourage you to do that as early as possible, because the later you go in the program, there's possibly you've taken some classes that you wouldn't need, so you're potentially wasting time and money. I believe the first semester, all 3 programs have the same 2 classes. So if it happened within this first semester, that would not be a problem. After that, you run the risk of taking some classes that you don't need. So again, that's going to cost you more money and time. Now, if the question meant if you're already in FNP and you want to get a focus in a different area, you would actually want to do what's called our postmaster certificate. And we do offer postmaster certificates in adult gerontology, acute care, FNP, and psych mental health. That's for people who already have an MSN degree. Those programs are shorter, and those can be completed in between a year or 2 years, depending on your educational background. So if that's something specifically that you're interested in, you've already got an MSN, you just want to get another concentration, you really need to apply for what's called the Advanced Practice Nursing Certificate of Graduate Studies. That's much shorter. It still gives you the same certification, but it's a quicker way to get it through and get the certification. So hopefully that answered your question, Lucelli. All right.
Absolutely, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. Other questions? Come on, folks. I can't believe I've answered every question that's out there. Well, don't be shy. What other questions do people have?
I noticed in one of the slides it talked about the FNP finding inpatient hospital jobs. Are you finding that's still the case, that hospitals are hiring FNPs for inpatient, like outside of the ED, or are more hospitals kind of starting to only hire adult geriatric acute care for inpatient?
I'm going to say it varies on the setting and the specific hospital.
Okay.
You know, it varies, and I'll say right now, due to COVID, there's a lot of things that are kind of changing daily almost. But you know, it varies from facility to facility. You know, again, the FNP is a good generalist degree. It just depends on what the setting is and what they're looking for. You know, certainly the FNP has more options, but it just depends. You know, they could go into a small family practice. They could, you know, work at a large facility. It just depends. So I don't, what I would recommend in a setting like that is find a place where you would want to work and contact their HR department and see what particular skills or what particular certification they're looking for. And then they can tell you what they are looking for. Hope that helps.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Other questions? Okay, here, if I do not get accepted to the psych mental health program, does that exempt me from other MSN programs? Not at all. There are different admissions committees for each department. So, you know, if you were to apply to the psych mental health program and didn't get admitted, you would certainly be eligible to apply for either the adult gerontology or the FNP program. That wouldn't be a problem. Now, if you're kind of toying between two, I would encourage you to apply for the psych mental health program first. And the reason I say that is they only admit during the summer. If you don't get admitted for that, then you still have time to change your application to either psych or acute for the fall. So I hope that makes sense. I understand. Yep. I know that some people have meetings, and I know this meeting started later than anticipated because of technical problems. If people need to leave, I certainly understand. Feel free to go at any point. Again, I'll be sharing the slides and the recording afterwards. But if you need to leave, not a problem. I certainly understand that. I realize most people probably have it, but just in case, here's my contact information. I'm willing to stay on and answer questions as long as people have questions.
So Scott, you mentioned that you take 2 courses per semester. Is that for the fall and the spring? But in the summer semester, which is 12 weeks, do you take 2 classes during that summer 12-week semester?
Yes, year round, and that's a good point. So we've got 3 semesters within a year: fall, spring, and summer. All 3 programs are year round. It's expected that you would take 2 classes each of those semesters. Another question that we will frequently get is, what is the break between semesters? So typically between the spring and the summer, there's a 1-week break. The spring semester starts typically the 2nd week in January. The summer semester typically starts the 2nd week in May. Between the summer and the fall, there's about a 2 to 3 week break. The fall session typically starts the 3rd week in August. And then between the fall session and the spring session, there's about a month break typically. The the fall session typically ends about the 2nd week in December, and then again the spring session starts the 2nd week in January.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Other questions? I am going to, as I said this before, I'm going to send the recording to everyone as well as the slides. It does take a while for the recording to process. So if it's not available this afternoon, I'll send it to everybody in the morning. If you don't get anything from me by, say, noon tomorrow, feel free to shoot me an email and just say, hey, Scott, I didn't get the email, or didn't get a recording, that sort of thing. So I'd be happy to share that with you. All right. What other questions do people have?
I was wondering if you are expected to stay with the same preceptor the whole way through the program.
Actually, there's different requirements. So it's not unlikely that the preceptor could not satisfy all 3 different areas because you're going to have different focuses. So it may be the setting can satisfy all 3, but it would not at all be unusual that you have to hit at least 2 different areas, if not 3.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Other questions? If you have a question that you'd like to ask that you don't feel comfortable asking in front of the group, some people have already found out that you can send me a chat note privately, and I can either share the answer with everyone, or I can follow up with you individually afterwards. I did notice in the chat that somebody made a comment about being interested in the Master's Entry to Practice program. That's a brand new program, first of its kind within the state, starts in January. Excuse me. That is for individuals who do not have a bachelor's degree in nursing, but want to become nurses. They've got a bachelor's degree in something else, might be biology, might be chemistry, might be something other than a science-related area, but they've got a 5-semester program. At the end of 5 semester, they'll graduate with their master's degree and are eligible to sit for the NCLEX exam.
Scott, would you say that a chemistry course is a hard prerequisite for the MSN degree?
Technically, there are no prerequisite courses. There are only the only prerequisite is that you've completed the BSN program. Now,
But in the documentation, it says that I believe it states that science courses are weighted heavily.
well, we look at those. When determining who we're going to let in, we see how you do in your science courses. We don't just look at, hey, what's the final GPA? We look at, okay, how they do in the different science courses. Now, I think there is an expectation that you probably had some sort of chemistry in your program. And if you didn't, that's not necessarily something that's going to count you out. We're just going to look heavily at the science courses and the nursing courses to see how you did in those. It's not just, hey, what's the final GPA, but we actually drill down, how did you do in specific courses?
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yep. All right. Any other questions? Again, I'm willing to stay on as long as people have questions. I do appreciate everyone's flexibility with starting this meeting later than originally projected. Not sure what the technical difficulties were, but glad you were able to participate. I also want to be respectful of your time. So if you have a meeting or you have something else you need to go to, I certainly understand. Feel free to do that. But again, I'm willing to stay on and answer questions as long as people have questions. All right, I'm going to give everyone about 1 more minute to ask a question. And if there are no questions, we'll go ahead and close down at that time. But again, just thank you everyone for your participation. I hope this was helpful for you. If you do have any questions at any point throughout the process, please do not hesitate to reach out to me individually. I do want to remind everyone that the application deadline for all 3 programs for summer admission is October 31st. I do encourage you to submit your application prior to that if possible. If you're looking to apply for the fall semester, applications for that will open on November 1st, and the application deadline for that is March 1st. Going to give about 30 more seconds for any other questions. Well, thank you everyone for your participation today. Don't hesitate to reach out to me if you have any other questions at any point. Appreciate you joining us today, and I'll be watching for your application. Have a great afternoon.